Okay, so we're here to talk about community learning mental health research. We've just spent a year doing a pilot and a year doing the actual research, and this is what we've thought about it.
Okay, so we've just finished the last of Katina's special coffee, so we're ready to go. So should we start by telling people a little bit about who we are and where we've come from?
Yeah.
So obviously we're the two main tutors on the research. I'm Sally. I've come from a long background in mental health as a community teacher and a manager of support services in Wolverhampton.
And I'm Tilly, and I've come from a background of learning disabilities, community learning and autism.
Okay, so we thought if we started by having a chat about the things that really stood out for us, because there were some things that were quite different about this project and this research from your typical community learning that we've done in the past. So we'll run through some of the things that stood out for us. So I think for me it was having that chance to go out and engage with such a massive range of people and not being tied to one certain building or location, and actually having enough of a budget to be able to hire venues that were a little bit out of the ordinary. You know, being able to work in our local hotel and then being able to work from the training shed and the summer house on the allotments, being in community centres. And I think that really helped us get out there and reach sort of a group of people who don't traditionally come to college or access this kind of activity.
Well, for me, one of the main things that stood out was being able to work with a group of older people. So I was completely shocked by how lonely and isolated people were, and how it really gave people a focus to their week, being able to come, and it made such a difference to people. And there were, you know, you could really see the change in people and them linking up and making friends. That the older group of people were the people that were important.
And do you think that, you know, it was a good budget and it meant that we could buy some really good resources, so rather than scrabbling around you can actually go out and get some real quality resources and things that were quite fashionable and that people were interested in. I think that worked as a really good kind of hook to get people in as well, and combined with the venues.
Yeah, it was lovely being able to say to people, well, what do you want to do? This is to help you improve your mental health, stress and anxiety, but what would you like to have a go at? And people saying, oh, I want to do
jewellery making,
and we could go and buy those resources. That was a real luxury that we don't normally have. So it was great that people could take nice stuff home.
Absolutely. I was just going to say, I think people were really bowled over by the kind of quality of the things that we were making, and that really gave people a boost, didn't it? And you know, being able to take things home and show it off with your family, or being able to make things, particularly around the Christmas time, for gifts for other people. That was definitely one of the highlights.
And do you think it helped people have a value?
Absolutely.
You know, it made people feel valued, that we were able to do nice things.
Yeah, people were sort of taken back in a really positive way, weren't they? That kind of, gosh, we're really going to be able to do this and take it home. Yeah, I think that really gave it quite a lot of kudos. And I think it meant that we could choose activities as well that were a little bit different, that meant people could really get stuck in. And we kind of chose things that, you know, got people to think about mental health and everyday stresses or things that had impacted on them. And did you think that when people were kind of really concentrating and it sort of took away all that nervousness and people started chatting and you could kind of add things to the conversation, and people were quite willing to share, weren't they, because they were occupied in this kind of shared activity. People, and I was really surprised at how much people opened up.
How much people opened up, and how people said, well, that happened to me, and I did this, and try this, and those things were I think were probably the most useful things that people took away, the things that other learners, other research volunteers had shared, and gave people those strategies to be able to cope with their anxiety.
But I think a lot of that did come back to people feeling that they had some value because we'd spent some money on them, and people were meeting in a nice place and using nice things, and we provided nice refreshments. I think that was brilliant.
The other thing that I thought was so incredibly valuable to people was the one-to-one IAG and how much time you could put into that, because it was so well funded. We were able to spend a lot of time and keep going back and checking and making sure that people were safe, even at weekends and in the evening, because it was kind of our sole job last year. We were able to put a lot of effort and really make sure that people and the outcomes from that were fabulous.
Yeah, we will talk a bit about those in a bit. But yeah, you're absolutely right, and being able to pick up on things that had happened in the group and keep that going and help with people's motivation. Yeah, I think in a similar way for me, it was probably the top-up sessions and being able to meet up with people sort of a couple of weeks, or for some people even a couple of months after their course had finished. But planning with them what it was going to be, and planning a top-up that was going to sort of stretch people and test whether they'd found these new skills. So, going to the botanical gardens in Birmingham and people meeting up.
Coming on the bus for the first time. Absolutely,
absolutely. And being organised and feeling confident enough to get there. But again, it comes down to budget, doesn't it? And we were able to help people with the cost of getting in. When we went to the art gallery in Wolverhampton to look at that fabulous exhibition, people came from all over the Black Country, didn't they? They'd use the metro, the buses, but we were able to buy people a really nice lunch in the art gallery as a kind of celebration and a recognition that had been a huge step for people. But that was fabulous, being able to have the top up, and it gave us a way just to check that people had sort of being able to do the things that they wanted to do following on from the course, and to do a little bit of troubleshooting maybe where things hadn't quite gone to plan. We were able to pick that up again with people. But I think it was something you were saying earlier about where people had come to the top-ups and they were talking about how they'd taken some of the things that they'd learnt, or some of the activities, and it's like, I did that with the grandchildren. They thought I was a really cool grandma, and I do that with my son at home now, and we've got these hobbies and interests. And it was great in the top-ups, people being able to talk about how they'd been doing that at home. And then we were able to share that with more students coming through and talking about the sort of things people had done. That was great.
Did you find anything challenging?
Yes, I was going to say, it wasn't all a bed of roses, was it? I think for me, you could see, it was so fabulous being able to see the positive sort of impact the course was having on people, especially people with that kind of more stress, anxiety, low-level anxiety issues. I think where people had difficulties and challenges that were more about depression and low mood, and from feedback from those participants, a longer course, even just slightly longer, they were just finding their feet and just growing in confidence. So not years and years, but a few extra weeks or a couple of months, I think we'd have seen even more positive benefit perhaps from that.
I think the biggest challenge for me were the people who volunteered in year one were really cross with us that they couldn't couldn't volunteer in year two, because people had really enjoyed it and really wanted to be a part of that. Especially the group that could see how valuable the mental health research was, because they were very keen to support this going forward. That was the biggest challenge for me, having to say to people, "Well, you've done it already.
You can't come back now." I think as well, perhaps a little bit of frustration around the criteria. And while we knew there had to be criteria, it was a research project. I think where people scored just slightly too high or too low, and particularly where it felt like they were doing that because they thought they had to score high no matter what you said, and then excluded themselves from the project. That was a bit frustrating, because where we continued to engage people, especially people who had scored a little bit too high, they really still had positive outcomes, and I think it might have been interested to continue. I mean, obviously there were some people coming through who were clearly not well enough to participate and get anything out of it, but there was a few people, wasn't there, that you thought, I don't think those scores really reflect where you're actually at, but that's all you're willing to share, and it sort of stopped them from joining the project. Progression.
We had some really good outcomes. We feel we had some really good outcomes. people setting up their own groups.
That was fab.
great.
That was fab, yeah. I think for me the gardening group that carried on, that went to find the greenhouse and the garden in the hospital at Edward Street in West Bromwich, and they carry on now as a group of volunteers maintaining the gardens there. I think that was superb.
And for me, it would have been the over 55s housing scheme group that took on a craft group, and a volunteer came in and did the craft group, and that's still going on each week. That was a really good outcome.
And I think that happened on a little bit more of an informal level as well. So I know when we did the run up to Christmas and we were doing Christmas crafts and things, and we had a couple of people there who were quite isolated because of their sort of physical limitations, and it meant they were quite housebound. And a group of them had arranged to get together to make gifts together and go to that person's house, and a real friendship sort of come from that. And I think they're still in touch and they continue to meet. So
we had lots of people going on to courses.
We had an awful lot of people going on to courses, and a massive range of courses as well. Yeah.
So what courses did you think that people would benefit from?
Well, I would say it was such a range of people we worked with, wasn't it? So you'd got lots of people going to college for the first time. So, we were able to identify where there was sort of literacy and numeracy challenges for people, and they went to courses at entry level and level 1 at their local colleges. And a lot of people went on to do employability courses, which was a huge step for people who really hadn't even got the confidence to come through the door initially.
And right at the other end of the scale, we had a lady who was unsure. She'd been made redundant and she was unsure about what she wanted to do next, and she decided to do a law degree, and she's just finished her first year.
Brilliant.
So that was a pretty good outcome.
With a distinction.
With a distinction, yeah.
Yeah. And I think, a lot of people went on to volunteering courses, but, we need to remember a lot of people went on to volunteering as well. And people actually took on their own allotments, didn't they, as a result of meeting on some of the allotments at Boundary Way, for example. But people went on to volunteer with other community groups, doing admin, working in gardens, all sorts of cafe, shop work, whole range of things. So it was great to see people build so much confidence that they were raring to go, and they sort of took themselves off in different directions.
And I think it helped lots of people to link up, didn't it? So we had parents, carers particularly, who'd linked together, and they're still in touch with each other because they felt they hadn't really been supported very well, and they were able to share their own strategies for coping as parents, particularly from the autism group. We worked with parents and people with autism, or carers and people with autism, and those parents seem to really have taken on that moving forward and having friendships.
Yeah. And in fact, a lot of people had said, wasn't there, that really coming to these courses, they didn't know what to expect, really. It's the first time they'd done anything like this. And the amount of people who said, gosh, this is the first time that I feel that I actually feel okay to talk about these things, but I actually feel like somebody's listening. And I think that links back to the one-to-one sessions and the being able to follow things up, but also about, the environment and the fact we were using all these lovely resources and fabulous places. It created a really nice environment, and people did feel able to chat, and we had lots of banter and tears and talking, but I think some real genuine friendships came out of running these courses.
So overall, do you think it was a good couple of years?
I think it's been a fantastic couple of years, and I think the majority of the people that have come through these courses and this research would agree.
The same for me. It's been the best 2 teaching years in my 20-year teaching career. It's been really positive for us, I feel.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you.